Hi, I'm Andrew, and this is my mum. She's the best. I live in Japan, but in the summer of 2021, while I was back in England, we sat down and had a little chat. So the first question would be, not what do you remember, but what did other people remember and tell you about when you were born?
Well, my dad related the story, mainly because what happened was my mum was delivering at home and she started delivering me, and I was coming fast because her thing that she liked while she was pregnant with me was castor oil for some reason. So my dad cycled round to the midwife, and it was about 10 minutes away, but couldn't get any answer at the door.
So you went by bicycle?
He went by bike.
Right.
So he wrote a note, and he left the note under the door, but the particular midwife was known to like a tipple and quite often used to go asleep. So this was in the afternoon.
Oh, so she was knocked out?
So she was knocked out. So he cycled back, and as he cycled back, he came into the bedroom, and I just slipped out. It was a very easy birth, and
I never knew that. So it wasn't like 20 hours of
no, and completely oiled, which probably has kept with me throughout my life because everyone says you've got lovely skin.
So that's the castor oil.
It could well have been the oil. Who knows?
Okay.
So my dad delivered me, and that was his proud moment that he delivered me. And then they
cut the cord?
No, they waited for the midwife to come to cut the cord.
Oh, right.
And
so
cut the cord,
wow.
and
sounds really easy.
And Jean was in the other room. My sister Jean, who was 4 years older than me, so she was 4 years old at the time, and then she came in to see.
Talking.
She came in to see the new baby sister.
All right. What was her? Did she ever sort of recount how did she feel like first time seeing you or anything like that? Does she remember?
Can't remember much, but later on she did say that the first 4 years of her life was best before I arrived, because the thing was that she was the only girl grandchild. So as the uncles travelled during the wartime and such in the army and navy and such, they would bring her dolls from other countries, and and she used to get very spoilt because she was the only grandchild. But then I came along, and then 4 months later my cousin Pat was born, and so she started. There was more of us. Wasn't just the one, and I don't know. In life, it probably didn't go down too well with her, as we found out. So that was the bit. But the thing is that there was always the fact that when my mum had my sister, it was during the war, right, in 1943, and she was moved out of London to Luton, to the Who in Luton, which is a big sort of like mansion house now. Right. And she was put in a room with a sea captain, and they both had their babies. My sister and the sea captain's wife, my sister and the sea captain's baby were born at the same time, and my sister always swore that they were swapped. They got them wrong, and she was actually she was the daughter of the sea captain.
Oh, this was her like sort of a fantasy.
Yeah. And she reminded my dad of that throughout his life, that he wasn't her father.
Was there any
she was really the sea captain's.
No
reason at all.
That?
She looked like my dad, the eyes, everything. I mean, she was straight one of us. There was no way she was the sea captain's. But because my mum told her that story, she thought that would be a more pleasant thing. Because the thing is, what happened when my mum was pregnant with my sister, was during the war. And at the Christmas, they thought it was going to be all over. But of course, we went on for another number of years. So a lot of people had babies in 1943. And what happened was that my dad then, being in the Navy, he ended up, he did most of the time in Algeria, working on, he was a plate layer on the ships. So he would repair the ships that got bombed and such. So it was all mainly in Algeria because that was the passage for the food getting to England. So, so it was heavily bombed. But then he ended up eventually in New Zealand. And so when he came home, my sister, who'd been, because my mum had to work, she went to work making portholes for ships. My granddad came down from Sunderland to look after Jean, my sister. And what happened is when my dad eventually got home, which was about 18 months after the war, because he had to come back on various ships, he was quite a size. He'd put on 4 stone in weight. And of course my sister had always imagined that my grandfather was her dad. So she just screamed the place down when he knelt down to pick her up. And from there, never really gelled. It never really gelled as a father and
a really
daughter.
Crucial time, I suppose. Yeah, you've got to be around.
Yeah. So that really then, that's been with her for her whole life, really.
She had sort of some like abandonment.
Yeah, the fact that she was spoiled, as the uncles did come back and they'd bring her dolls and plate and things from abroad and stuff.
And then being the only one.
She was the only child.
First
and then, of course,
4 years,
you know, my dad comes home and, well, what's happening? You know, I'm happy with mum and you know, supposedly my dad, but it was her granddad. And so, of course, my dad comes home and then, of course, once he comes home, sort of like 10 months later, I arrived. So it was probably a complete upheaval in her life, really, which she really never dealt with. She did have counselling later in her life, but they didn't really deal with it properly. They said that it was why she had a chocolate thing, of eating lots of chocolate, was the fact that she had this thing with my dad, but I don't know how they related the two together. They said she comfort eating with chocolate.
I suppose they just deduced that, from. And
but she was always battle with him, and she always controlled the family because she controlled my mum and grandfather. When my dad came back, in order not to upset anything. She just continued controlling, which she did throughout my life until about 1989, when my dad faced her and said he wasn't going to be controlled anymore, and that was it. So it stopped from there.
And so,
but I was a happy little buddy, happy little child. I was
a big part of your life early on. Was she looking after you?
Yes.
Do you have early memories of her?
Look after Betty Ann. When you go out,
looking after you.
And I'm playing, look after Betty Ann. But she didn't want to look after me, particularly when she got to a teenager. They would want to go up to Trafalgar Square to meet the sailors, and having me, dragged along wasn't,
Going up to meet the sailors.
Yeah. Well, the sailors, all the Navy used to get into Trafalgar Square at the weekends. They'd all be on leave and stuff. And so it was quite good. There was dances and things like that. So yeah.
All very innocent.
Very them days, very. Yeah.
So if she had some sort of resentment about you, then as a teenager being asked to look after you.
Yeah, as well.
She must have
but I could look after myself.
About.
I was, the street kid. I was the gang leader. I was more a boy because my mum wanted boys. So it was a bit sad, really, because she wanted a boy. A girl appeared. So I was always dressed in blue. My sister was in pink. I was always in blue.
Okay.
And usually in some form of trousers because I used to climb everything.
Well, that was going to be my next question. So what's your sort of earliest memory about your interests when you were little? So you weren't into combing dolls' hair and.
Oh yes, yeah. No, I like dolls. And I had
okay.
Each Christmas my
so
grandma.
you were playing with dolls and then also going out and climbing up on the
I could
site.
do either, whatever. I could turn to whatever. So I had a little gang, 4 little boys, scruffy.
How old were you at this point?
Probably about 5 or 6. They used to knock for me, much to my sister's disgust.
You could just go out
and play
on your not on, with them, like kind
anywhere
of
you like.
unsupervised.
Anywhere you like. But
and this was in an area where there were bomb sites that were still potentially dangerous.
She used to play on the bomb sites. Oh yeah, my mum used to say she used to get me in my Sunday best because every Sunday we'd go to one grandma and granddad's one Sunday and the other grandma and granddad's the other Sunday. And so I was dressed and sat on the doorstep, told not to move. Then my gang would arrive, and then I'd be off. And she used to say, "Don't go up on that bomb site. Don't get yourself dirty. You sit here and wait, till we're ready to go." But I like to move around. And
so, what do you remember? How is it that you came to be the leader of that little gang then? What was it, do you think, that you
Well, I don't think they had imagination. They didn't have... I had a lot of imagination, I could just, we could play house and cowboys and Indians. Because my mum, her thing was going to the cinema, going to the pictures. She'd go to the pictures twice a week. And so, we'd go along with her. And then, so when I come out the pictures, I was... the film, which was a lot of cowboys and Indians in those days, the films.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, all sort of the same. Yeah, right. So you'd be wanting to reenact.
But then, of course, you got the Hayley Mills, the actress, came along, and she was in, her first film was Tiger Bay, and she looked like me. So everyone sort of joined me with Hayley Mills, her sort of life.
Was she a child actress?
She was a child actress, yeah. Okay. She starred in it with her dad, and she was a scruffy little kid on the docks. And, I didn't think I was particularly dirty, but I suppose, they would term it now street kids. But the thing was, although we were let out, you had your area. You knew that on the left, you didn't go to the road past the church. And then above, you didn't go for the road beyond the school. And then on this side, you didn't go into what would be the Old Kent Road. That was your demarcation of your area to play in, right? You had your sort of area. And but the thing was that you didn't want to stay inside. I mean, there was nothing inside, really. You had your dolls and your pram, or whatever, but you used to take that outside with you. Right. Everything was left outside.
You'd want to be out as much as possible.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, I wanted a little bike, and my dad said, "No, we'll get you a bike when you can ride my bike." So he used to put me on his bike, but of course my legs never reached the pedals. So it was a good get out, really, because I was never ever going to be riding when I was a child. But they did buy my sister a 3-wheeler bike with a little boot on the back, and I was allowed to borrow it to ride round this block, which was a tenement block which had a big wall round it. So I could cycle around the block and come past her and her friends sitting outside the flat.
So they gave you a really specific sort of area that you could route that you could take.
As soon as I got up, because the walls had four openings into their play area in the middle, right? That they could get out. So I would cycle up, they would come out, stand on the back, and then I'd cycle them round the corner. Then they'd get off and run through the gap to the other gate and wait for me to come round again. So as I passed my sister, there was nobody on it.
Oh, wow.
So they started to wonder why the back was starting to slope, because the kids were standing on the boot. So It was a bit naughty. I was a bit naughty, really, I suppose.
That's clever, though.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, well, I can only go on this route, but there's a way that
I'll pick you up. You run across. Right. You run across, and I'll pick you up on the other side.
So you're a little bit sort of cheeky then, you're trying to sort of bend the.
Oh, Ball was bending the rules a little bit, yeah. Right. And because my sister had her 2 best mates, Janet Powell and Janie Mays, who used to live upstairs in the flats, and Janet Powell was from school. So she'd always go around with them same two. But I had lots of mates, you know.
Up to see the sailors.
Yeah, see right. No, it's all sort of quite. There was nothing. There was no. That day you didn't meet people and then sort of like, you know, I don't know, have something to somewhere. Eat, you know, sneak off somewhere. Wherever we weren't that sort of girls. I mean, there were probably girls like it, but my mum used to say, if you get pregnant, you're out. I'll chuck you out. Don't come back. Don't even think about it. Right. So you were petrified, really. And of course there was nothing then. It wasn't till 60, 61, I think, when the pill came in, when things got a bit more liberal. But in those days there wasn't. And but we had to, that's moving on a bit. I was going to say, my mum used to say, don't come home, you know, don't even think about it. So in the neighbourhood, because we were always dressed nicely, because my mum used to get the Provident check twice a year, so at Easter and Christmas we would get some new clothes and stuff. Okay. So we were all always nicely dressed. Also, we had Mrs. Mays upstairs, the machinist, and she would make things if my mum got material. Because at one point my mum worked for a Jewish family, and they did all sorts of materials. So she would get a bolt of material or something. So we would get a dress, we'd get some dresses made and stuff. Wow, we never had hand-me-downs ever. I never wore my sister's clothes once she got too big for them.
Right.
We always had our own clothes. No way. Like the royal family. The royal family always have, you know.
So is that a sort of kind of badge of pride? Like
badge of pride. You didn't have to have you didn't have to have your brothers. We were always, but, you know, nice shoes and stuff.
Wouldn't you say that, like, you know, in so many ways, that spirit, like post-war of, you know, kind of mend and make do, and you know, if you can make it yourself, if you can do it yourself, then that's kind of seemed to be something.
Yeah, because eventually we made, apart from coats, we made all our own clothes, and my sister used to like to go dancing as I did. So I used to meet, because at the age of 9 she had the polio injection from Canada, but there was something wrong with the injections, and she caught polio in her arm, and which caused 18 months of surgery and stuff to put hinges, bolts and everything else, which enabled her to move the arm. But of course it never grew from a 9-year-old. It was the same size as a 9-year-old. But then we slept in a double bed. We had our bedroom and we were in a double bed, and until we were 12, till we moved. And then we got single beds. So in the bed of a night time, my thing was that once we got into bed, I'd manoeuvre the arm up and down to work the muscles. So eventually she could get her arm above her back of her head and up the back for a zip and stuff.
So you would actually like manipulate her arm yourself?
Yeah, I knew the exercise.
She couldn't do it
without help. So I used to do that in bed with her. Yeah.
How long were you doing that for then?
About a year, 18 months or so, until the muscles started kicking in.
Amazing.
But I never realised, because...
And you were about 5 at this time, is that right?
Yeah, I'm about 5 or 6 at this... 9, yeah, I'm 5, yeah. I was 5. They used to take me up in the pushchair, and I can remember taking up a big Christmas stocking up to her, because she was in the hospital over Christmas. So I take a big sock up to her, and she.
I didn't know that was a tradition.
Oh,
taking a sock.
Well, it was a big Christmas. Christmas sock.
Christmas.
Yeah, it's a Christmas sock.
Stocking.
Yeah, Christmas stocking up to her, because she was in over the Christmas or whatever.
Oh, right.
And so, but they got through that. And my mum and dad always, you know, they always worked. My dad worked hard. My mum had 2 or 3 jobs. She used to do cleaning and stuff. And so it even though we were in a really condemned building, we never felt that we were poor in any way. We never felt that, you know, you didn't have anything.
What did Grandad do? What did your dad do at that time?
Oh, my granddad... Well,
no, sorry. So, your dad.
Oh, my dad. Oh, yeah. My dad worked doing lorries, the rivets, building lorries, panels for lorries and stuff.
Panelling. Oh, right. Panelling. That's what he'd done during the war.
Yeah.
So he went on.
To do that after the war. He went back to Davis's, where he'd originally worked.
Was he there full time?
And he was there full time. Yeah. My dad would go off at 7 a.m, come home at 7 p.m. It was full on.
And what was your mum doing at that time?
And my mum at that time, she had cleaning jobs. She worked at one of them was Dolphin Square, which a lot of MPs lived in Dolphin Square, and a lot of actors and things. So she saw quite a few things.
She was cleaning houses?
Yeah, the flats in Dolphin Square, luxury flats. But there were some really strange characters. But by cleaning the luxury flats, she saw a lot of decorating and stuff that others wouldn't do. So she always set her mind to say, you had to save then. You didn't, you know, you had to put money away if you wanted stuff. So she always set her mind that she'd have that. And she'd tell my dad, who could turn his hand to anything. He did woodwork, metalwork, you name it. Dad could do it. So I remember he came back, she wanted this wallpaper, but the trouble was they put the wallpaper up and the next morning it was on the floor because the walls were so damp it wouldn't hold the paper. Okay. So really that room, which was our kitchen, had a big black range that we used to have to black on a Friday in there. It was lovely, and it had a dining table and chairs, and it had a rocking chair. And so when I came home from school, I used to ask for a nursie, which is what they call it up in Sunderland, and I'd climb up and have a nursie on the rocking chair with my mum. And that was our time before my sister got home from school. That was our quiet time. Nursie. She'd climb up for a nursie. It was a rock in the chair.
Oh,
you know, just cuddling me and rocking in the chair.
Oh,
yeah,
nice.
Just in the rocking chair.
So you called it a nursie?
Yeah, she called it a nursie. Well, we were called bairns as well. So she would say, you know, you got the bairns, Eddie.
Yeah, so, just briefly. So what's immediate sort of parents, grandparents of your dad were from...
Well, my dad's parents were from the East End, from Stepney,
and parents also?
And their parents were from Ongar in Essex.
Okay, so coming inwards from Essex.
Yeah,
but it was
they used to be blacksmiths.
Oh, okay.
In Ongar, but when they could see the demise of the horse and cart becoming cars, so they moved to London to work on the railways. And he used to do plate laying on the railways, Grandad. But the train does it now and tightens them up. But then they used to walk the line and tighten them up with this this rod type thing. You know, put it down, then tighten the screws up. So he was very, very strong, my Grandad. Very, very strong hands.
What did they call that job? What did they call that?
Plate layers on the railway. They were called plate layers, which I think was why my dad went on to like plating, you know, on the lorries. It was a similar sort of
similar thing.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah,
and then ancestry of your mum.
Now my mum, he worked on the ships. My granddad works on the ships, building ships down in the docks in Sunderland, and they're on one of those old-fashioned streets where you just see a door and a window, and the street goes right down to the dock, and the ships that they're working on is at the bottom of the street, literally. And so they would all come out and all walk together down to work on the ship.
Right. Well, it was a convenient sort of commute.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
So your mum was born in Sunderland.
In Sunderland, yeah.
So then, why did they move down to London?
They moved down to London because there wasn't much money. The ships were starting to build in other places, like Scotland and things. So it became a job, you know. And then my mum, when she first got married, she still used to send money home for the family to survive, you know, because they had 10 children. So, well, she actually had 14, but two died at birth, and the other two, I think the little girl lived till she was 6, and I think one of the other ones about 2 or 3. So there was 14 children. She was just, you know, that's what you did. You just, you know, Catholics just.
I can't imagine quite how, like, what would the feeling be? I don't suppose she ever, like, but the sort of feeling when you have, say at that point, she has like 11, 12 kids, and then one of them dies. I mean, is it as devastating as if you just had like, you know, 1 or 2, or
no,
did she ever talk about it?
Not really, not
it's
really.
It's hard to imagine these days, like having 14, you know, anyone having 14 kids.
And the 10 of them, I mean, the thing was that Mary was the eldest, then my mum was the next down, and then when she had the babies were given to the elder two, Mary and my mum, to wean off the milk because the next baby was coming. So it was crazy, really, because they're in a 2 up, 2 down with all these kids. It's just madness. But there was nothing you could do about it. You're Catholics, that's what the things. But when my grandmother, I think she was about 42, she'd had enough because it had wrecked her body, because every single birth was a cesarean. None of them were normal. And so she resorted to a wheelchair and never walked again. That was it. He had to look after her from then on, give him something to do.
So the way you say it sounds like she was like...
Oh yeah, she hated it. She hated it because her granddad ruled her. But my mum used to say that you didn't relax until you heard his 2 boots land on the ceiling and knew he was in bed, and then the house relaxed, because he was a bit of a tyrant, apparently.
Right.
So, yeah. Oh, yeah, you got the strap and all that business. That was all going on, yeah.
And that's on your mum's side, and then...
That was my mum's mum and dad, and they moved... When they retired... they removed to Hemel Hempstead. They got a little bungalow in Hemel Hempstead, which was lovely. And he was really tame then.
So they came down.
They came down from Sunderland to be closer, to London.
Much later on.
Yeah.
Right.
And he became a pot man in the local bar because he liked to drink. But he became a very soppy, deft granddad. So all I knew was a soft... used to help him on the whole of the back garden, which was very long, was an allotment. So I used to go out and help him with all the, getting all the stuff for...
And he'd become much more...
And he'd just very
calm.
Passive. Yeah, very passive. Yeah.
And what about, so from what you were told, like, from, your dad's parents...
Well, dad's side, they also lost a child, Edwin, when he was 4. But I've only found that out through Ancestry, because I said to him, there's a picture here of somebody called Edwin, and he said, well, don't worry about him. So I thought he was an uncle, but he wasn't. He was, he was a brother. He was born after Aunt Dole. So you had Dole, Reg, my dad. Sorry, not Dole. Lillian, Reg, my dad, and Dorothy, or Dolly as they called her.
Right.
But between Lillian, there was Edwin was born. But he, as I say, at 4 he died. So it's don't say I've not looked up what he died of, but it was never spoken about. Dad never spoke about it at all.
So it might have been quite a kind of painful memory.
I don't think he knew much about it because he was born after it. He died before my dad was born, so he wouldn't have known him. It was probably Lillian that would have remembered him more, as a brother. But no one ever mentioned him the whole time. Never mentioned.
And what about the way that? So you said like, your mum's dad was quite sort of aggressive, but how was like your dad's dad? As a,
my dad's dad. Granddad. Granddad Grandad Wheatley, no, he was nice. He was strong, he was firm, but he was as soft as butter to us grandchildren. I mean, I could pin his hair up. Very, very soft-hearted, very, very, kind-hearted. But my grandmother Wheatley had a terrible temper, really bad temper, and she's the one that used to beat the kids. She had sort of an inner anger, which my aunt Ave thinks that my sister inherited, and it's an anger with no reason, because my sister's the same with her 2 children. The punishments don't befit the crimes. They are heavy, vicious punishments, and that's how she was with the children. But only her could punish them. My dad was smacked at school. You used to have the ruler over your hands, and he came home, and when she found out what they did, she went up the school. She was always dressed in black barathia, as they called it at the time, fitted outfits, and black gaiter shoes and black umbrella and this black hat with a big feather. And she went up the school, and she chased that school teacher round the playground with that umbrella beating her. And she never touched any of the boys again. And my sister did the same, because when my sister moved to Scotland with her 2, Mark, her youngest, came home, and he'd had the rule across his hands because they were still doing it in Scotland. And my sister went up and gave the teacher what for. So if the children need chastising, I will do it.
So you can't hit my children. I'm going to hit my children.
I'm going to hit them. I'm going to belt the life out of them. But you can't.
Like when I see fit. I suppose it's like saying it's up to me whether they are due a bit of a beating.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So,
but my granddad, apart from working on the railway and stuff, he was also the street money lender. So he'd wear this big money belt with all these pockets of money around it, and people would knock to borrow in the street, and he'd lend them the money, with interest and whatever.
Was that a regular thing to have a money lender on every street?
Usually you had someone in the street that could lend you some money, yeah. I mean,
was this up? Was this...
This is in the East End.
It's in the East End, right, yeah. Oh, yeah. Sorry, yeah, your dad's...
Oh, yeah, it would happen all over. People would knock and say, have you got any sugar? Have you got any some butter?
Money lending, was there any sort of interest, or was there anything?
Yeah, you'd put a bit of interest on it, yeah. Put a bit of interest on it and stuff, but not enough that would knock them sideways. It was always quite fair. But nobody ever knew. It was all a silent thing. They knock at the door, do their thing, but nobody ever told anybody else that they borrowed or they knew anyone who borrowed.
But everyone knew that he was the money lender.
But they knew he was the money lender. But what happened was, when my dad started work, and the first thing he wanted to do was to buy a car, and he came home with his black car and parked it outside, went in, said to his dad, come and see the car, and my granddad said, well, you can park that in another street, otherwise the neighbours think we got money. So, so you never showed wealth. But inside the house, you could see that they did have money, with what the things they bought. You used to have chaps come round, used to have the Italian man used to come round with a suitcase from Italy, and he would have guipure lace, material for blackout curtains. He would have, his case would be full of stuff that he could sell door to door, and and stuff. So you bought from him, right. And so it's an interesting place. But I could never understand in the house why the front room was always kept, which we could have all sat in, but we sat in the back, in the snug. Which was very snug, with a fireplace and a dining room table and 2 armchairs. It was a small room.
Yeah.
Oh, the front room was big. very big. Had piano.
And that was a standard
settees.
thing that you didn't really use it.
You don't use that, only for funerals.
Yeah,
and
I think that's a really hard
stuff.
one, because that was a regular thing, but it's a hard one to kind of give any real reason for. You know, it's one of those things that when now you look back on it, can't really think of a reason why anyone did it. I don't know if you have any theory.
Well, I think it was the room where you showed off things you could buy that were, you know, like this room. I can only remember it was very young. It was somebody's funeral, I don't know whose, and I went in and I remember the piano and this silk shawl with all these long fringes was draped over it, velvet curtains at the window, and then these heavy lace, guipure lace, you know, intricate design along the bottom of these lace curtains. A beautiful room. Wow. And then the fireplace, and then two sides of the fireplace was Grace and Faith, because you had these ladies, you had the four ladies, Grace, I can't remember now, Hope, Grace, Faith and Charity, I think it was. Can't remember, but there were four ladies, and I always remember that Faith and Grace, I think the other two were in the other room. I think they were in Art Doll's bedroom.
So it was really quite, like, it was sort of quite
Victorian.
a high standard. It was decorated.
Oh, very high standard, yeah.
So would you say, like, within your neighbourhood,
we lived well.
You lived quite well.
Yeah.
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 And
the same as we did in our flat, to what was how they were living. Even my Aunt Mary across the road, we lived very well. They used to call us the two princesses because we were always well turned out. Same as my mum. My mum would go to church because they were church warden. She was the people's warden. He was church warden for about 27 years. So they would go to church on the Sunday, and my mum would always wear, she'd always have a nice suit and a nice coat and eventually a fur coat, you know, always nicely presented on a Sunday, and always helped the other sisters out, Aunt Belle and Aunt Mary. She would be the one that always used to help them out. But I mean, we weren't rich by any means, but my mum had sort of ideas, like I say, working in Dolphin Square, she'd come back and she'd want, like, on the wall, instead of just putting pictures up, we had actual squares that the pictures went into, you know. So my dad had to build these
what sort of
fancy squares, and then the pictures are inserted, because she's seen that in the galleries.
What, inset in the wall, like inlaid in the wall?
Oh no, not inlaid on the wall. No, he would make the frame and the backing, and then the picture went into it. You know, like you see in stately homes, they go round and there's all these squares on the wall, and inside of them is a painting or something.
Ah, I see.
So we had to build these squares on the wall outside the fireplace.
A frame, but a sort of frame.
Yeah, it was like a beading or a twist or something frame, and then he'd back it with something, you know, put something on, and then the picture went in the middle of it because she'd seen it. Well, then one time she came home and said that she'd seen wall-to-wall carpet, because before then you had wood or stone floor and a rug in the middle.
Yeah.
And she said, I want wall-to-wall carpet, and I want it all matching in the hall and up the stairs, matching the living room. So as you open the front door, it all looks the same.
Carpet on the stairs as well.
Yeah, up the stairs as well. Which is one, at that time, you would have carpet pads, or you would have the carpet down the middle with the stair rods, and then painted on the sides. It was unheard of to have the carpet go right across the stairs unless you were wealthy enough to afford it. So yeah, she always had sort of quite, you know, and I always remember in the flat she went down to there used to be a big furniture place, I can't think of its name now, and she went down and ordered a dining room table with 8 chairs for the living room. And it came back, and it just filled the living room with these chairs. But it had to go back.
8 chairs?
It had 8 chairs, yeah. 6 chairs and 2 carvers. But it had to go. She'd mismanaged the measurement. It had to go back. Because my dad said it looked like we were sitting in a boardroom. And when we were eating, he said what we need is a railway going round to take the soup and the gravy and the salt and pepper around it, because it was so large. So that had to go back. It was
conveyor belt
far too big.
Sushi.
Yeah, like sushi. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was quite funny. I remember that.
What was the address? This is where you were till you were 12.
It was flat 2B, 84 Balfour Street.
Right, and you were there till you were 12.
Yeah.
And can you tell me?
June 16.
Can you sort of paint a picture of what? So your street, Balfour Street, and then sort of the immediate neighbourhood. What was it like when you were, sort of from your earliest kind of memories to up until the time you left?
Well, as I say, they built this building, the buildings opposite us, these old flats quite high, and then the wall around them.
This is after the war they built those.
No, before the war they were up. And so that always put our flat was always in shade. Our street, that part of our street was always in shade. You didn't get any sun at that end at all. It was always in shade. And they've pulled it all down, and they built flats there with balconies and left our buildings, which were condemned at the time, but they did them up and put extensions on the back for kitchen and bathroom, and they still stand in the middle of all this Elephant Park, all these luxury apartments, but still in shade, because they built them high, so it's still in shade.
And how, like, what's the sort of, so that area, you said Elephant and Castle. Did you say that area is Elephant and Castle?
Elephant and Castle, yeah.
The street you grew up.
Yeah.
And at that time, so South London was, pretty much all South London was sort of
bombed.
Yeah. Well, no, but was thought of as a kind of working class.
Oh yes, definitely.
Area.
Yeah.
Just pretty much anywhere south of the river.
Yeah.
And what about?
They'd work on the paper mills or the docks.
All right.
That sort of labour work. Labour was the work.
And within that,
because we had the big newspaper up on the Old Kent Road. We had the main newspaper used to be printed up there. Now I wasn't allowed to go up there, but a friend I've met sort of like now later who lived further up the street from me, they were allowed. That was their barrier, was the other side of the Old Kent Road. So they used to go round to the paper place, which was shut at 4:00 in the afternoon because all the papers had been out, and it had a big chute where the papers came down and shoot into the lorries. So they used to use that as a slide. They used to always play on that was their big slide.
They were able to get in there.
Oh, it was outside. It was outside. Just loaded a lorry up outside. Just came down the chute.
That's fine.
So,
and you said before that you had a very specific kind of area that you were allowed to roam freely.
Play. Yeah.
And you stuck to that. You wouldn't go wandering off when you were younger.
No. Well, you would if you were your mum. We'd go up to the East Lane and other places and round to Aunt Bell's. But not if you were on your own, you did. No.
Yeah. Or with your gang.
Yeah.
So what about the feeling like the Elephant and Castle at that time, like in the context of South London as it's like working class area, was it seen as like a nicer area to be in than or
no,
not so nice area? Was it a bit rough?
Very rough.
Was it was it dangerous or?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Well, It's funny. I say it was dangerous, but the thing was, it wouldn't be dangerous to us, and it wasn't dangerous to me as a girl. But the thing was, it was gangland, and it was. We did have we had the Razor Blade gang, and we had the bike chain gang, There was all sorts of gangs that used different weapons to different, but it was gang warfare.
So they were named after.
They were named after what
weapons.
they used.
Right.
But of course, when the Krays came on the scene later on, of course, they got pretty well wiped out. So the Krays got as far as they could, but then started to come towards the Elephant. Now, the Elephant was the Richardsons, and they were vicious Richardsons, and the Krays were frightened of them. So they didn't actually get to the Elephant or Camberwell, the Krays, because the Richards, that was their patch. But the thing was, they treated women really, really well, and they lived very well, suits and everything else. So,
So I sort of imagine that like the sort of mafia at that time. It was only if you were involved in organised crime. It's only if you were trouble for them in some way that you would come up against them.
But they would one of the gangs. They were at the end of Westmoreland Road when I was coming back one night, and because I used to go to night school and stuff, and the chap came across the road and escorted me back home, just in case, And so that's for women and girls, no problem. But it was just gangs on gangs, as it's still seems to be. Don't seem to have cleared that up.
What about
But we would go to the cinema, and we'd be sitting with my friends in the cinema, and then at one time these boys rushed down, jumped in the seats beside us, pretending that they were cuddling and kissing us, and slipped a gun under our bags, and then the coppers came down, and then they went. So obviously we're looking for them, but and then they took the guns and went off. I mean, we were too young.
So they had guns.
Yeah, because they had guns from what people had bought from the war. They bought their guns back.
Oh, right.
So they had their dead gun, which was why I don't know. Bentley, the one they hung.
Oh, let him have it. That one.
Let him have it. That's it.
Right.
They'd have the guns from the war.
So there was this period of time where guns were quite common, and then they were gradually people gave them up and threw them away or whatever.
It became knives. They had the bike chains, anything you could hit someone
without
with.
Guns. Yeah.
But you were involved in fights. It was only just the gangs, really, and I don't know what it was all about. Just trying to be, I don't know.
Well, I was thinking in terms of law and order, that so post-war, it's a bit chaotic because you've got bomb sites and there's not a lot of money, kind of public funds for things like policing. So did you feel
no, you had a bobby on the street, you knew him. Yeah.
So they were around.
You had a bobby for your area.
And they knew.
And they knew you.
People. Right?
Oh yeah,
they
knew you.
The locals.
Oh yeah, if you're in trouble, they would say, I know you and I know where you live. So just watch yourself.
Yeah, you
were petrified
make a big difference.
Petrified of them.
If the local police sort of if they saw your face and they were like,
well, we weren't so frightened of them, but if they told you mum and dad, that's when it was frightening. But the thing is, of course, my mum and dad, because of the way they were brought up, my mum and dad never hit us. Never hit us because of the way they were brought up. It wasn't fair.
Okay, right.
And the only time that my dad smacked my sister was when this girl knocked at the door and said my sister had bitten her. And my dad came in and my dad smacked her, much to their dismay. They didn't want to do it, but they say you don't bite. But unfortunately, our windows, our living room and bedroom windows, were large windows onto the street with window sills that you could sit on. And sometimes of a night we used to bang on the window if you got a courting couple, because they didn't realise you were asleep the other side of the window, so you just bang on the window till them get lost. And but this afternoon the two girls were sitting outside, and my dad was sitting in the living room, and she said, I got Jeannie Wheatley into trouble. I told her dad that she'd bitten me, and he vowed then he'd never touch us ever again, because she'd lied. Yeah, she just lied to get my sister.
Sitting outside the window.
Yeah, and she just lied to get my sister a smack. Yeah. So from then on, no, we used to get locked. Not locked, but we used to get sent to our room. My sister didn't so much, but I did because I didn't think I was naughty. I don't know. I suppose I was cheeky more than naughty, really. But then I didn't mind going to her room because my toys were in there, so you don't
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, go to your room. I mean,
but that's the other thing. Of course, every Christmas, my grandma would make us a doll out of flannelette sheets, right? And she'd embroider the face, and then she plait woolly hair, and whatever. And they were sort of like cuddly dolls that you could sleep with. So I had a selection of these dolls and stuff. But when I was 14, my sister said I'm too old for dolls, so she made me put them all in a bag and put them in the dustbin. So they were all got rid of. So, which is a shame.
Yeah, it's pretty harsh.
Because my friend brought out, when we went to see her last week, she brought out a doll. She's got a picture of her with this doll when she's 18 months. And she brought out the very doll. She's still got the same doll. And its clothes and everything, yeah. So she says she's, 66 years old now. Yeah, which would have been nice, But,
yeah, what do you have from your very early years? Is there anything that you still have now?
Well, no, because the other thing was that I was quite a sickly child, and I got, I'd had the measles, I'd had the mumps, I'd had whooping cough. It was all coming in the same sort of 18 months, and then it ended up with scarlet fever. After the scarlet fever, I was down to about 3 or 4 stone, I think it was. It was about 6, I think. And they decided it was better for me to go away. So I was sent to Littlehampton for a month. And I thought I'd been naughty, and, because nothing was explained ever to you. You went to these places. And a month away from your parents is quite a long time. But while I was away, they had to burn everything. Because scarlet fever's so catching. So they burnt all my toys, all the towels.
The doctor told them to do that.
Yeah.
So that everything you had
got burnt. To that point, got destroyed, yeah.
And when you came back, you recovered, did they sort of, to make amends,
No, I'd have the Christmas doll. I'd have little Susie for Christmas made out of flannelette.
So for a period of time, you just didn't have any possessions?
No.
Wow.
No, none of us did, because it all had to go. And whatever I touched.
Were they, keen to sort of reassure you that, you hadn't done anything wrong, just,
No, I just came back. My sister said she'd had a good month. And I just came back, and it just continued on, and they just said everything's gone, we had to burn everything, so it's quite crazy, really.
So what was what sort of feeling, of kind of, warmth, affection, and so on, did you feel from your mum and dad?
No, you didn't after the nursery period when I was little, no, there was no cuddles, affections or anything, or my mum, you nobody kissed my mum except the vicar, and that was on the cheek, and she went mad. But that was in hospital.
Oh.
Well, no, he was leaving her in hospital, and he just said goodbye. He hadn't kissed her on the cheek goodbye, and she never got over it. She was. But no, nothing like that. There's no hugs or anything. The only hugs I got was eventually from my dad when he went in the nursing home, and then I insisted. I insisted on hugging him because he was so depressed. But no, not that sort of thing. And it was only when Tony used to talk about, getting into bed, his mum and dad's bed, he said, do you remember on a Saturday, Sunday morning, you'd get in your mum and dad's bed and it was still warm and everything, and play. And then I thought to myself, after they got up, and I said to him, but I'm just trying to think, my mum and dad didn't have a bed. And he said, well, they must have done. I said, I'm trying to think, where did my mum and dad sleep? And then I thought, oh my gosh, for all those years, they'd slept on a put-you-up in the living room. And they must have put that back before we got up.
Every day?
Every day. And put it down once we'd gone to bed every night. Because I thought to myself, well, where did they sleep? So it was in the living room, and we had the tin bath in front of the fire. So Friday night was bath night, and you had to get into the yard, and we could only get in the yard through this window. There was no door. So my dad decided that he'd make it into a door. But it was strange, because as he came down to lock the brick through, there was a big a girder running through, which there was no rhyme or reason why. It just went the whole lot of the whole way round the building.
Sideways.
Well, it just went round the building. Whether it was some sort of way they built them, I don't know. So we had to put all the bricks back and build it back, put the window back. So we used to get a chair, climb out the window. The bath was on a hook, on a nail in the back. Bring it in, and the copper was in the hall. The boiler, the copper was in the hall. So we'd get the pans, my mum, get the pans of hot water and put them in the bath.
Right.
And then we'd put the clothes horses, 2 or 3 clothes horses round, put towels over them, and then my dad could sit on the settee.
For a bit of
privacy, we could have our baths. So my sister was first, and then I used to be second. I used to go in the same water after her. But so that was Friday night, hair wash and a bath.
How long would you sit in the bath?
Not long, no.
Would it be like 5 minutes or like 15?
About 5 minutes, yeah. Just to get yourself just washed all over.
It's quite a practical thing then. Because you never shower.
Yes. Well, no, because there was only one sink, the Belfast sink. Because what happened was, in the hallway, we did have an inside toilet, which was a luxury, because most people had outside toilets. And my Aunt Mary across the road, it was a block of, 4 stories, so it was 8 flats, shared the same toilet on the first floor. There was only one toilet.
Wow.
And the kids used to run in and out and use it as well, because if we were playing round the back, we'd just run in the nearest place to go to the toilet. So we would just go up the first floor and go to the toilet, and out again. But we had an inside toilet, and that formed a bit of a cutting in the hallway. So my dad, there was a Belfast sink, and my dad, they had a cooker, the electric cooker on opposite. And then he built work surface and cupboards round. You didn't have fridges in those days. Your fridge was putting it outside on the windowsill in a pan of cold water. And that's, because your milk was delivered every day. So, he built this little kitchen in the hall. So there wasn't a proper kitchen, because this room where the black hearth was, which was great, because you could boil your kettle, you cooked on it, there was a fire constantly going on it, was defunct now, because that room was so damp. It was just a walk through in the end, because it was so damp you couldn't sit in it. It was too bad to sit in. And
was it like damp and with sort of like mould?
Black, yeah. Walls
bad.
Black, pretty bad. Yeah. Well, they were condemned. When we moved out, they were condemned. They were going to be pulled down, but obviously they did them up, and they looked quite smart outside now. Cleaned all the bricks and everything.